Shalom, Truth Seekers. Here's another update on the Covenant Calendar Club Sundial Project. They're practicing over the summer so that they'll be able to get good practice for the fall equinox event, trying the straight line method, so they will be ready to try and pinpoint the day of the straight line using sundials in the spring, I guess if you live north of the equator. But I'll be collecting all the pictures to this Facebook group, and there'll be a link in the description below this video for a shared Dropbox folder where you can access all of these files by date. So here's some data coming from Michigan. This sister is, I think she's one of the Covenant Calendar Club leaders. And so she's actually done this at least for 1 year. She did it this past spring, I know, and maybe prior. So she knows what she's doing, and it looks like she's got good early morning and late evening points. And actually, it looks like this was collected during the summer solstice event. So that's interesting. Yeah, it's an interesting comparison to kind of look at how these data points were, this entire arc pattern was kind of progressing in one direction until the longest day of the year, if you live north of the equator, and then it starts to return. And I think that happened pretty much right around the tail end of the data she collected. So just looking at it real close, looks like yellow was the first day, then red, then green. So like green looks like there, the one in the middle is below the red. And then there's one where it's kind of above the red. So it can be challenging with this, trying to pinpoint the summer solstice with a small sundial setup. The movement is extremely slight around a solstice event. But yeah, if anyone's interested in comparing more solstice data, I have a couple videos breaking down other people's data from the solstice, and also there are more pictures from that shared folder. But this is definitely good practice for the straight line equinox event. So here's some data from Missouri, and this is excellent. This person is they're blessed. I mean, I don't know where to begin. So a good spread of data, 7 to 7, and it looks like they collected data every hour. There are about 13 data points and 12 spacing between them. So that's just really awesome to look at the spacing of that curve, and it looks like they even snapped a picture when the shadow was still actually on that last mark of the day. And that's a really clear shadow for that time of day. Like, I've done early morning and late evening points, and my shadow has not looked that clear. So this is awesome. How tall is their nail? 3.5 inches. Huh. This is just excellent. And there are a couple important things to notice about this data. As I mentioned, they appear to have taken data points every hour. So if you look close to the nail at the top of this curve, the points are all really close together. There's not much movement around midday, but in the morning, the spread between data points is huge. And so I just want to encourage you to be careful. It's most important to get those early morning and late evening points at the sides ends of your curve there. And the shadow just moves very quickly that time of day. So if you kind of went to go get your coffee or something, if you want to make sure you're paying close attention, it's easy to miss, easy for that shadow to kind of creep away or on and off your board real fast. The other interesting thing to note is that this shows beautifully. If you look at this data set, the points near solar, the midday points near the top of the curve near the nail, look how little they shift in the north-south direction. So you can see an N at the top of the screen here, and then an S at the bottom here. So they're showing you north and south. So the progression of the points from north to south is happening a little bit every day. Like this entire shadow pattern is going to shift north or south depending on what time it is each year, a little bit every day. And you can see at midday, at the middle of this curve, it's not shifting much north to south. Like there's not much movement north to south. But if you get to the early morning point or the late evening point, there's a lot of movement in the north-south direction. Not only movement from hour to hour along that curve, but there's a lot of hooking. There's a lot of north-south movement, and that's what is so important for the straight line test during an equinox event, because you'll see it'll be easier for you to see the curve, like the straight line, with those early morning points. Though for whatever reason the sun hooks the most in the early morning and less during midday. So if you're only getting like points from mid-morning to mid-afternoon, it might look straight for a couple days, but it's really these early morning and late evening points where the hook is the most that helps you to distinguish. And you're going to want to get 3 days of data during the equinox event. That's the optimum thing to do. So you're going to want to see this curve one day, and then the next day in sequence, you're going to see a straight line. And then the next day following that, you're going to actually see a flipped curve. And what is optimal is for you to collect data like this 3 days in a row. So you see one curve, a straight line, and then a flipped curve. So that's excellent practice there. Here's some data from Missouri, Mississippi actually. The other one was from Missouri. And it looks like they're collecting from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. That's pretty good. I was looking at this and I was like, oh, it looks like they only got from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. But then I noticed there's like marks all the way out here to the left, like at the bottom of the screen down there. You can see there's a 7 a.m. And there's another 7 a.m., I guess, from the board above, and actually all the way to the left there on the side of this big blue note, looks like there might have been another one for 7 a.m. That's interesting. But that's just another example. Look how much movement happened in the morning between 7 a.m. and 8 a.m. Like you want to, and that's where you get the most north and south movement too, which is important, which creates that hook. And so I just encourage you, if at all possible, try and get those early morning points. And let's see, so they're using, I think, vertical nails to mark these points, and I guess that's okay. The only thing I would say is just make sure your board doesn't move when you're pounding those nails in. Because if things do shift around, that can obviously mess with the data. So the other thing I might suggest, you don't, so yeah, it looks like he had these boards stacked, and that was good because it caught this early morning data point that ran off his board. During an equinox event, you shouldn't have that much of a curve, so he probably won't have points running off his board close to the equinox event. They'll all be on the board. And the trick for that is you need to make sure to orient your board due east and due west in the long direction. You can kind of see he has his compass marking there, and it looks like that's pretty much what he did. But there's just so much curve this time of year that if your board is narrow, it might jump off. But for the straight line test, in theory, and I've seen it play out many times, I guess, but as long as that board is oriented east and west, you should be able to catch all your marks for the 3 days of the equinox event, like the curve one way, the straight line, and the curve the other way. You do want to be careful not to be tempted to point your board at the rising sun, because unless you live at the equator, your board won't be pointing due east. Only if you live at the equator will it be pointing due east on an equinox event. Any other day of the year, because of your latitude, your location on Earth, if during an equinox event, if you tried to aim your board at the rising sun, it would actually be angled. Your board wouldn't be pointing due east, and because the sun is cutting that perfect east to west path across the sky, if your board isn't east and west oriented, it'll run off your board. So, but anyway, yeah, that's That's definitely good practice. Here's some data that came from, I think, Innocent where was that? I don't even know if I can say it right, but it's like South Africa. It's like Malawi. But anyway, it's hard to tell what's going on here, and this was just, I think, their first practice, and that's fine. Get out there, and if it makes sense to them, that's good. But it's kind of hard to see. It took a while staring at this to try and figure out what was going on here. But it's good to try and make sure your recording surface is free of all other marks, so you can tell what's going on. It was hard to tell what's going on. It looks like there are a whole bunch of lines running up and down and across, and more over here. And I think eventually realized it almost looks like he was taping or splicing pieces of paper together. I don't know if that's like a staple pattern or something. But I eventually noticed he does have what appears to maybe be a nail hole in the top of that paper. And there are what appear to be some arcing points. If you look right there in the middle, there's one. And then here's a couple more right here. And so they kind of looks like maybe that's kind of what he was doing there. Maybe there's another one lower down. But yeah, I mean, it's just a good example of kind of the things other truth seekers would need to see. It's great if it makes sense to him, but in order for it to be make sense to other people, there would need to be a little more clarity in collecting the data. But I think this was just his first attempt, so good job with that. This is exciting. I get excited when I see these taller sundials. So this actually comes from one of the Covenant Calendar Club, I think the Covenant Calendar Club leader, Tim. And he is electing to, looks like, use a tall sundial, taller than the little boards. And it looks like he has flat land to do that here in this parking lot. And it just I get really excited. I think he said he collected his first data point at 6 a.m. And let me just show you. Oh, this is hard to see, but his spread of data was so large. It was so we were just looking. There's that spool at the top of the screen and all those little rocks that he laid out. But he had a point that was all the way. I think that might be, well, there's a point up there. But then he had another point that was way down here at the bottom of the screen. It was so far away it didn't fit on the picture he took. But you see on the right, here's this little orange circular thing. You can see his spool at the top of that screen, and then at the bottom, if I flip to the next, you can see this little orange thing again. And there's his last point, the blue one at the bottom. Okay. So then you can kind of see his spread of data points there. So I wanted to go back to this one. Just the idea is, and the more I think about this, I really think this is kind of the optimum thing. If you have flat land, this is going to make it so easy for you to and it does need to be flat. Watch out for it. It's fine if it's a slope, like a sloping yard, but it can't have ripples in it. Like if it is sloped, it needs to be flat. Like I'm not talking level, but it needs to all be flat. Like you can't have big divots or humps or things in your yard. You gotta watch out for. But this looks pretty flat. But I mean, I'm just thinking. Like I know Danon in California was doing something like this earlier this year around an equinox event, and he proved he was using like a paint can and paint stick and some steel washers and like tape on the ground to mark his spots, and he showed that from one day to the next, like this rock pattern, this curve pattern shifted so much, you could clearly see like 3 or 4 inches between the data pattern from one day to the next. And so I would say if you're able to get your early morning and late evening points using this method, It could be a challenge depending on how much flat land you have, but your shadow points will be pretty far away from your setup here. Like this one, as I said, was way out of hard to get in the picture here, but I think you're going to discover that, like, this is a much clearer confirmation. Like it's pretty good with a board. Like some of you, if you're able to get like 12 hours of data, like or close to like 11 or 12 hours of data, I think it's going to be pretty clear for you with a small board. But with a setup like this, I think it's going to be so much more clear. Like you're going to see a pretty good jump between that north-south shifting of your pattern of your rocks or your points in the early morning and late evening using this method, and as long as like a truck doesn't like run over and move these rocks, maybe like painting the ground would be good. And if you do paint the ground, maybe have like 3 different colors for the 3 different days or something, so you can tell which points are which. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what he comes up with here. I hope he sticks with this, and I hope other people also try taller sundials like this if you have the flat land to do it. And I've been thinking lately, and I have a feeling this is pretty much what probably Moses was doing with the rod of Yah. Like he had the staff, and I think he pretty much just stuck that thing in the sand, and it might have been a little taller than this, but I think that's kind of the optimum setup. Now that, after all the years of experience of doing this, I know that this shadow is, people doing this, I think, are going to be pleased with the results that they get. It's going to be very clear. So just looking forward to seeing what he gets there. And so this is just a cool little snapshot that the Covenant Calendar Club put together, showing the people participating where they're located in the North America. And so that's just an excellent spread. I know it looked like the Creators International Dateline landed somewhere around the central United States, and it'll be interesting to see where it lands this year. From what just happened for the summer solstice, it almost seems possible. Like it might land for the fall. It might be in the same area, which would be interesting, because it would give people a second confirmation of what they actually saw, and maybe in time to kind of confirm or give them more peace about the timing of the holy days around that time. But it'll be interesting to see if it actually continues to shift for the fall equinox event, like the Creators International Dateline. It is always moving, and that's kind of why this exercise is happening, to try and pinpoint who sees the straight line first. And the straight line seemed to be seen first right around the central United States. And so will someone over in California be the first to see it? Does it continually shifts to the west a little bit every year. And it'll just be interesting to see if it shifts all at once in the spring, or if in mid-year in the fall are we going to be able to see it shifted a little bit. But if it didn't, maybe it'll give people a chance to get a second confirmation of where it was this spring. It'd be interesting. And then here's a map showing where people are located around the world. And I have a few more as well than I hear from. And it looks like this map might not be updated for a few of the ones we looked at, like the Maui one in South Africa. I know another truth seeker in South Africa. So, but this is a good spread. The more people that do it, the better. We'll be able to confirm where the Creators International Dateline is and where his times begin. So I the more the better. I encourage you to join. If you want to just leave a comment or feel free to join the Facebook group. Let us know you're interested, and you can join the effort. So shalom, and may Allah bless as you continually seek out His truth and love with a pure heart.